G'day guys and welcome to me lab and to this our second episode in the Making Monkey Fracas Jr. in Godot tutorial series. In this one we're going to add our starfield background as well as some movement for our player. So let's jump in and have a look at our file structure and what we're doing today. So in terms of the file structure that we talked about last time, what we're going to be editing or working on in this particular lesson is our main view. So we need to actually create our background scene and add in our assets for that. And we're also going to work on our player, which we've already started, but we're going to add a script to it in this one. Let's get cracking and get this done. So this is where we got up to. Let's move on from here. The first thing I think we should do is get our background sorted out because we're going to add some movement to our player. Without a background, there's no point of reference, so we won't know what's going on. So the way we do that is we come up to our top here where we've got our player tab. Next to it there's a little plus sign. Let's click on that plus sign and that now gives us a new empty scene that we can play around with and we can choose our root node. So last time we clicked on other node and search for our character body 2D. This time though we just want to go straight to our 2D scene. And now it calls it node 2D. That's not going to help us. So let's rename it to background, just so that we can remember what different things are. All right, let's save that already just to make sure that we don't forget to later. And we want to save this one into our scenes directory because it is going to be our background scene. And then click on save. You can see that spinning pinwheel of death. It is something that plagues me on my desktop for some reason. No issues on the laptop. No idea why. All right, so we've now got our background scene sorted out. Now, our background scene is going to make use of what we call a parallax layer. So our parallaxes is all about having different items sort of moving at different speeds, if that makes sense. So we're going to do a little bit of playing around. Some of it here won't be particularly useful, but it's more just to illustrate the purpose. Okay, so we're going to use two different parallax layers to sort of show how that works. So the first thing we want to do is with our background root node selected, we're going to click on the plus in our scenes there, and we want to find our parallax background. So that's this one down here, parallax background, and create that one. So that's now going to add it to our scene here. And then we're going to add to it a couple of extra parallax things. So we're going to add to our parallax background a parallax layer. The first layer we're going to rename to sky. And then we're going to do another one. Except we don't want that as a child of the sky, we want it as a child of the parallax background, and this one we're going to call stars. All right, now we still haven't done enough yet. There's a few more things we have to do. So these parallax layers on their own don't have anything. They don't show anything. They just allow us to change some properties. That's kind of what these nodes are about. They give us inheritance of things that we can edit. So if you look in our inspector, you've got this motion here. We can change our scale, offset, mirroring. Those are the things that we want, but we're still not ready yet. We've got to add some sprites. So there's actually something there we can see. So with our sky selected, click in our plus and look for a sprite 2D. And then with our stars selected, do the exact same thing. We're looking for a sprite 2D. There we go. So we've now got a parallax background, two different parallax layers, and each of those has their own sprite 2D. So now we need some sprites. You might recall that for the assets for this particular part of it, the background, are going to be one called, I think it's bg.png, and one called nearstars.png. So that's what we're looking for here. So I'm just finding my assets, bg.png, drag that one in, and near stars, there it is, drag that one in. All right, they've not gone where I wanted, so I'm just going to drag them into the assets folder because that's where I want to keep everything. There we go. So our assets folder now has our BG, our near stars, and our ship. So I've currently got the stars sprite selected. So you can see over in our inspector there, we've got our texture empty. I'm going to grab that near stars.png, drag it over and drop it into that empty spot. And then I'm going to move this down so it's a bit better aligned to the corner like that. Excellent. Now let's do the same thing, but for our sky. So get our bg.png, drag it over to that texture, move it around so it's about lined up. Excellent. So that's it so far, but now what we want to do is actually manipulate those parallax settings. So let's go to our sky first and have a look. So our motion, we actually want to set this one to 0. To be perfectly honest, there's no need to use parallax for this, but I just wanted to do two just to sort of, you had experience messing things around. But we do want to edit our mirroring. So what we can do here, and the reason we can use the parallax to make this sort of an infinite thing is the mirroring. So 1152, I think, is the right number there. Yes, it is. All right, now we've got to do the same thing to our stars. But for our background, we set our scale to 0. Our stars are the thing that we want to see moving interestingly. So we're going to click on our stars, click on our motion. Our scale, instead of 0, is going to be 2. And then our mirroring will be the same, 1, 1, 5, 2, and 0. So now you can see we've got our infinite star field ready to go. So let's save that for later, and let's go and have a look at our player script now. So what's left to do in this particular lesson is going to be our player script, because that's how we're going to give it movement. So let's go back to our player scene, which should be our ship like that. And then what we're going to do is, if we've got our player node selected, we can click on this here in the corner, which is like a white scroll with a green plus, which adds a script to that node. So we can click on that one. Now it wants to know what we want to call it. We don't want to save it into our scenes folder. We want to save it into our scripts folder, and player.gd is fine. We're also going to leave that template ticked just so we can talk about what that does. Create that, and it gives us a script that already has a whole bunch of info in it. Most of it is completely useless to us, but I just wanted to talk about it. So what happens is when you create a script for a node, it inherits properties from that node. So our player root node was a character body 2D. So we extend those properties here, and it gives us all of those things to mess around with over here in our inspector as well. All right, so we don't need any of that gear. We don't need our speed. We don't need a jump velocity. We don't need gravity because we're in space. Get rid of that. All right, in our physics process, we don't need to check if we're on the floor because there is no floor. And we also don't need to jump, so we can get rid of that, get rid of those comments. And what we're left with is our basically left and right movement. And even this, no good for us because we're not going to control our left and right movement. The computer's going to do that for us. So let's get rid of all that as well. And so all we're left with is move and slide, which on its own won't really do much. It's something that you could obviously learn a lot about. If you hold down Control or Command and click, you actually get taken to the documentation for that particular thing. So one of the great little tips that I could give you is if you're ever a bit sure, oh, what the heck is this move and slide? If what you do is just when you're hovering over it, hold down the Command or Control button, depending on what platform you're on. It'll then allow you to click on it and get information about it. You can do the same thing up here. What is the physics process, right? Straight away, it just takes you to that documentation, which is a wonderful feature. All right, let's close those documents down and go back to our player. So we still need to add some code here to make this all work, right? So I think what we're going to do is we're going to bake in some features that we need later on, just because they're really minor and it'll make it easier later. So the first thing I want to do is actually add a variable up the top here called var can move forward. And we're going to set that to true. And the reason we need a variable checking whether we're allowed to move forward or not is because when we're going to fight our boss, we want our forward movement to stop. And the easiest way to do that is to have a simple variable that we can turn on and off. So that's what that var can move forward is all about. Once we've got that, we really don't need to do anything more until down here in our physics process function. Now, our physics function is something that runs every frame. So if you want something to be consistently being checked, this is where you put it. If you only want it checked when we start, then you would put in a func ready, right? And that is going to be what runs at the start, but we're not doing that. We just want to focus on our physics process function because that's going to be going over and over and over every frame. All right, so what I want to do here is we're going to add in a couple of things that, again, aren't going to be needed yet, but we may as well do them now because they're not difficult to do and it'll provide more context. So I'm actually going to copy this across so I don't bore you with all my typing. So we're going to grab that, and all the way down to there. All right, cool. So I'm just going to do this, paste that in. That's in the wrong spot. All right. So let's talk our way through this now. What we've got in our physics process function now is we've added a variable called base speed, and we've set that to 200. And our base speed is important because what we're going to do is increase our speed as our level increases. So that's what's going on there. So we've got a base speed, and then we're saying that every level we go up, we're going to increase that by 25. So, roughly 10%. So we then create a new variable called forward speed, and we're going to set our forward speed to be equal to our base speed up here, plus our global player level -1 times our speed increase per level, if that makes sense. So we're using these factors here and something we haven't made yet, which is this global player level, to calculate our player's speed. We'll keep moving down and we'll come back and fix this error up later. So we've now got a variable called vertical speed factor, which is, I think quite obviously, our up and down movement speed. And what we want to then do is set our forward movement to be constant. So you don't control it, the computer does that for you. So we're just saying our velocity x being left to right, is forward speed, which we set up here, right? So it's just constantly going to move at whatever this calculation is. Otherwise, velocity is 0. So if we can move forward, go this fast. If we can't move forward, go 0. I think that makes pretty good sense, hopefully. Down here is how we control our movement. And what we're doing is we're using a command called get action strength. So we can sort of vary our speed and our movement up and down depending on what finger you're pressing harder and things like that as well. And then our move and slide. I've also got a print of the velocity there just to make sure it's all working. And no arguments in Godot 4. No arguments in your move and slide. All right, so we need to sort out this global player stuff. The problem I have with sorting that out on my computer, this is an M2 Mac Mini, and for whatever reason, it hates it when I go into project settings. So it's very possible I'm going to actually do this on my laptop and just paste the solution in, but I'm going to give it a go first. If any of you know why I get the spinning pinwheel of death when I go into project settings, I'd really like to know. All right, project settings. Now, for our global script, what am I doing? We actually need to make it first. We can't set a global script without making a script for it, can we? I'm already getting the spinning pinwheel of death, so this doesn't bode well. But let's make the script on this machine, and then I will probably have to add the script to the global settings on the other one. But let's give it a go if we ever get out of here alive. All right, so let's try and get that global script made. So what we're going to do is in our script menu option, we're going to go File, New Script, and we're going to call it global.gd, just like that. So this is all it gives us to start with. But all we actually need in here, so delete all of that, is we just need to sort out this here. So it's this global.player level. So that's all we need to add, right? So let's just go var player level equals 1 and save it. That's all we need to do to make that work. So I've saved that now. What we've now got to do is add it into our project settings. So I'm going to do that on my laptop and cut that in. And then once that's done, we'll come back and we'll give it a test to make sure it's all working. Okay, so save that and then follow whatever I do next. And then we'll come back to this one and we'll work it out. All right, good. All right, so let's jump back in and try and get this wrapped up. So I think before we play it, we'll need to just mess with our camera settings. So jump into your player scene, go to your camera 2D, and then jump across to our limits. So so you got our camera 2D, you come down and there's one here called limit. This is what I want to mess around with. So we've got our left and our top currently at -1 billion. Let's change both of those to 0. Leave the right and bottom the same. I think that might be all I want to do at this stage. So let's save that and maybe it's time we give it a go. So let's go back to our background, find where our player is. There they are there. Oh, hang on. No, there's one other thing I want to change. Let's go back to our player. There was one other thing that I wanted to check on. Where was it? Bottom. I actually wanted to change the bottom to 176. So this is just because if we don't do that, we won't get as much movement in the camera. So let's just go with this, see how it looks. See how we go. All right, so let's click on our background. That all looks good. Let's click on our play button this time, and it's going to give us this dialog. Please confirm no main scene has been defined. Well, we do want to use this as our main scene. So let's go current scene, and now will the up and down, we can see the left and right works. Will the up and down work? Yes, it does. Excellent. And down here, you could see the printout of 400 and -400 and things like that. So there we go. We have got our movement sorted out. Our auto scroll to the right works. We can move our ship up and down. Excellent. I think that's a pretty good spot to leave it for today. Right, so what you need to get done in order to stay on track is make sure you get that background scene made, adding all the nodes needed. So your node 2D, renaming that to background, adding your parallax background node, and then a couple of parallax layers, as well as a couple of sprite 2Ds. You then need to read the documentation for move and slide, because I reckon that'll set you in good stead. And what you might like to think about doing is experimenting with those parallax settings to see what you can make them do differently. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to just make exactly what I tell you to make. You want to make your own thing. All right, let's have a look at our quote of the week. Our quote this week comes from Omar Khayyam, one of my favorite early Muslim poets and scholars. And he said, "Dead yesterdays and unborn tomorrows. Why fret about it if today be sweet?" Thanks very much, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.